Welcome to the Directing Animation Livecast with Scott Weiser. Now that I'm done directing the development and first episode of the second series at Space Station Animation, I'm joining up with Steamroller Animation to push the boundaries of the art form. Thanks to the support of so many of you, I'm continually developing more than 10 dynamic feature film pitches while mastering the art of telling deeply meaningful stories. And speaking of meaningful stories, today my guest is Alex Orrelle. And his work is incredible, like the depth of it. We have films like Klaus that he worked on that was on Netflix. It was the hand-drawn film directed by Sergio Pablos. He has worked on The Incredibles. He's worked on the Looney Tunes shorts, the CG ones that were on TV. He's worked on Space Jam, and the list just keeps going on and on and on. The depth of experience that you have is incredible, Alex. And is there anything you'd like to add to that intro?
No, thank you. That was amazing. I hope I live up to that, Scott.
Yeah. And your treat today, the treat of everybody on the audience, you're going to share some original content that you're pitching today. So do you want to just jump right into that, and then we'll start discussing it and about your process and things you've learned at different studios and all of that stuff?
Cool.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
Here we go. All right. So, hi everybody.
Go ahead and share.
Okay. I'm going to start sharing. And thank you, Scott, for having me on this show. I'm going to share a screen, and what we're going to have a look at is just a couple of images and the story behind a project that I'm out pitching now. Because in general, as you have said, I'm going to talk about pitching original project, developing original animation, as well as directing animation. And so Dream On is if anybody saw The Incredibles, 2004, so it's an animated adventure comedy in the spirit of The Incredibles, right? And so for those who haven't heard me or of me, then I've had like a 20-year animation career, going from sort of international animation to Hollywood animation, back and forth quite a lot, because I don't actually live in the US, I live in Israel. And I've been sort of jumping around, doing wonderful opportunities in animation development and leadership. But the highlight of my career so far was working on The Incredibles all those years ago, right? It says it's from '04, so it's like 18 years ago. But it was 20 years ago when I was working on it, because it was just fantastic to work on. I love superheroes, and I love the family story that Brad told. It was such a, it was a deep and meaningful personal story, but it was also super respectful of action and real danger, in the kind of way that family films in the 1980s used to have. They had an edge to them that I wish, I could do or see more of these days. So anyway, I love that. I think a lot of people responded to that as well. And ever since then, I really was dreaming of making a film that would walk in the footsteps of The Incredibles. And so, around about, a few years ago, when I was growing up, parent, probably dealing with the same kind of things that Brad was dealing with as he decided to write his big film. I was having trouble sleeping. I mean, I probably not the only one. And I sort of jokingly tried to count sheep. Because everybody heard about counting sheep. I wanted to see if it works. But when you're an animator and you count sheep, something is bound to go wrong. And sure enough, there was one sheep who wouldn't just jump over the fence. And it made me realize, maybe this is my story, maybe this is my film. And so I came up with this idea that, because I really love video games, that Dreamforce is this kind of, these sheep who help us fall asleep would be also kind of a cover for this awesome, like, science fiction-y undercover Mission Impossible group that goes into our dreams, right, into our nightmares, and solves them, fixes them, so that we don't wake up, right? Because I really love video games, and I kind of love the seriousness of them, I also sort of thought, how can I make this feel a bit more professional and a bit more sort of exciting and gritty and realistic? And so I created this whole world of these sheep
There's like a
as
panel.
they,
That's great.
yeah. And they work worldwide. They always have to answer the call of somebody having a bad nightmare, right? And so they just jump into a nightmare wherever. It's kind of like if anybody saw the movie Inception, another movie, a filmmaker that I love, Christopher Nolan. Well, I kind of call this Inception with sheep, right?
Yeah.
Mission Impossible that jump into a bad dream, and whatever's wrong, whatever's going wrong, they fix it. And in fact, if you've ever woken up from a dream, from a nightmare, it's because these guys screwed up. And that's who our story is about. It's about one of these sheep who screws up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the introduction of the pitch, which I'm not going to do all of it now, but it kind of gives you a taste of what I love in terms of my taste,
Yeah.
and in terms of where I want to go with it in terms of style.
Well, and while you're working on all your studio projects, you're this is definitely live. Everybody can see it. we've had a few little hiccups here and there. We've shown the background of the actual live streaming in YouTube, but it's okay. This is live and this is fun. So
sorry, I should have.
Yeah. So you're working in all these studios and helping other people on their projects, but you're also building these projects at the same time, which is something that definitely resonates with me and my audience. That's what what we're all about as well. So how do you feel about that project? How do you manage your energy as you're going about that kind of work?
Oh, great question. Speaking of energy, I discovered your show because Mark Andrews was on it, and I saw that, I loved that guy's energy, right? I mean, I worked with Mark at Pixar. We crossed paths for a little bit, and boy, he definitely is strong coffee.
Yeah, he is.
and it's sort of like, and growing up in the industry with those kind of examples, just in terms of energy of presentation and of work, it's a little bit intimidating, because I don't know about you, but most of us animators who kind of grow up not being the most extroverted people, but more like the shy kid who likes to draw by himself or herself. And so especially coming into an American big film studio with a lot of kind of loud, opinionated, energetic people was a learning curve for me. So that's kind of one kind of energy I wanted to mention, to put out there, which is something I had to learn to do. But in terms of what you asked specifically about how to balance energy, I guess, between this kind of work and that kind of work, and then again balance energy with family, because I'm not just a professional. I'm also a father, and I'm a husband. I'm a brother. I'm a son.
Yeah.
And we tend to, when we get into the weeds of our work, we also tend to dismiss that, to forget that side of life, which at the end of the day is really kind of what matters. So family comes first for me. And then in that whole, family and work balance, and work isn't really just work, it's our fun, it's our hobbies, it's our creativity. Then there's another, that sectioning that you're talking about, which is like, what do I do for money? What's my professional work that I'm doing in order to get paid, to pay the bills, keep the lights on? And what do I do that's a dream, that's kind of a ambitious thing that I'm investing my time in developing, so in the hopes that one day we'll get to make it. The way I balance it, I think, is, so I used to be a bit artsy about it and kind of see what do I feel like now. But I'm also incredibly conscientious about doing what people expect of me first. Meaning, if I have a client, I need to satisfy the client first. I feel beholden to people who are expecting stuff from me, whether they're paying me or not. Okay. Sometimes if somebody's waiting for a drawing or an idea or a meeting, that's very important. I'm that kind of guy. But what I've done recently, 20 years in the industry, you're bound to kind of experience a little bit of a taste of burnout.
Yeah.
trying really hard, kind of working in startup mode for so long, it leaves a mark. And and I think that what I've learned to do recently in terms of balancing energy is to make sure that I'm looking after myself, sleeping, eating, moving, and playing. Having good times with family and friends, and that establishing that as a bedrock for everything else.
Hmm.
I think that's pretty much how I balance things. I try not to do more than two things a day that require thinking and drawing and focus, because I can't change lanes too quickly.
Right.
Um, I mean, I can, but it just costs a lot in energy. So try to not.
Yeah. And I feel like these side projects, these passion projects actually recharge me too, which is nice. So if
Absolutely.
I'm consistent, I put that in a certain part of the day, before I do something that's a little bit exhausting, it tends to help me, you know, balance out that energy of the day, which is fun.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I agree. I still haven't decided what goes in which part of the day. Some people say that more energetic earlier in the day, sometimes more later. I It kind of doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
And also working remotely, with American clients, working from where I'm working in Israel, which is currently the time here is almost 7:15 p.m.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of used to long evenings, and having to sort of muster up my energy pretty late at night, late in the day.
Yeah.
I kind of learned to have to sort of balance that out, manage it.
Oh, that's neat. Do you have any
Yeah.
tricks on how you've learned to do that, or just?
Um, yeah, I mean, my workspace is playful.
Yeah.
I have sort of a TV with a PlayStation. When my kids are not playing, I get a turn as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Nice.
but but playing is important. I schedule a lot. I used to think that scheduling is for important business professionals,
Yeah.
but actually, no, it's really important for artists as well. And so I schedule, if I need to see my week coming up, I need to have like a date with my wife, I need to have a hangout with a friend, I need to see my dad, my mom. And so if I have those plotted, and then I also plot out my times to work on my project, whether it's Dream On or Rage Mouse or something that I'm developing with a friend in LA, and make sure that it's a balanced week. But they don't all balance. I think that's the big trick, is
Yeah.
you can't get everything that you're doing into every week.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes you just have to say, I'm putting that thing on the shelf for a while. And yeah, I can't put any energy into that right now. Right. Which is okay.
Exactly.
Actually, sometimes I think a project actually needs that. Especially we're
Yes.
trying to create these deeply meaningful experiences that feel organic to the audience, but we're crafting them. And you're bound to start to see the edges of something and the seams of
Mm-hmm.
something if you don't take a break and like decompress and then come back to it and say, oh yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
realize there was a whole seam right here in the story, a big gaping
So true.
hole. Yeah. So
Yeah. And you know what else, Scott? And I don't know if this is a trick, but as we work really hard to sort of not just develop the creative, the story and the idea for a film or a series, um, so much of that work is also getting people's attention to it, yeah, getting meetings. I'm
mhm.
going to Los Angeles tomorrow to go to, I'll be at Lightbox, and I'm going to do a series of meetings, and you need to really go out there and hustle,
Yeah.
and to balance that out, I kind of feel like, wow, I miss drawing, I miss animating. um, and sort of not every job that I do includes drawing or animating, because
Yeah.
as you know, sure, the more you're directing, the more you're sort of supervising or leading a team, it's healthier to step back and let the artists do their thing and sort of not, right? But
Hmm.
I miss animating, and I feel like, I'm decided, I'm started to look into hand-drawn animation again, because
Yeah.
since my two hand-drawn short films in college 20 something years ago, I haven't really animated, and so I miss it. And I think I'd really enjoy just diving into that, and I'm sure somebody else might like it as well. So that's another trick.
Yeah. That
Excited
is.
about the tool.
Yeah, try a new tool. That's great. Also, I want to put a little caveat in here. I run across a lot of people in the industry who think this is the kind of work you and I are doing, where we're doing these hustling these original projects. That that's the kind of work they want to do. And then I ask them what they're doing to make it happen, and I don't see any movement there. And
Mm,
a lot of times, it's possible sometimes because they feel guilty, like they think this is what they need to be doing. But I'm like, well,
okay.
what do you actually enjoy doing? Well, I want to just be animating all the time. I want to create this new shot, or I want to do fan art of these movies, like maybe they're visual development artists, right? But they
So
think they
true.
need to have a big project. It's like, no, maybe you don't. Maybe
Yeah.
your passion really is creating that fan art or creating the animation, and you don't have to, you don't have to be climbing a ladder or that sort of thing. You can, kind of like the Hero Dreams of Sushi documentary, that man who would make sushi. You can make
Mm,
each time you make a piece of sushi, he would make it just slightly better, right? And if your passion is
yeah.
animating and you get a thrill out of animating shot after shot, that should be your passion, and keep doing that.
I
Um,
absolutely agree.
because on the
Yeah.
opposite
Lovely.
end of the
Well said.
yeah, the opposite end of the spectrum, my friend Chris Oatley just created a course about this. It's called the number one question that will save your career. Ah,
Huh.
what's the name of the website? It's really good. It's really good. I'll share it on
Put it in
LinkedIn
the
or
show
something.
notes
I'll
in
put
the
it in the
comments.
show
Yeah.
notes. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, he was talking about how he thought he wanted to be a story artist, and everybody kept telling him, "Be a story artist. You have a lot of talent, in this area." But he couldn't
Yeah.
get himself to sit down and draw storyboards,
Wow.
and
Wow.
eventually, and it was because he wanted to direct that they kept telling him to do that as well. He decided he
Yeah.
actually didn't want to direct. He wanted to create an online school and help people get past their roadblocks. And now he has Oatley Academy, and it's an incredible school that he's
Mm,
created, and it's what he feels like his calling is. And so,
terrific.
yeah, if it's
Shout
something,
out. Yeah.
if it's something you're just driven to do and you just can't not do it, I think that's a good indication.
That is the sign. That's
Yeah,
true. And I don't, it's interesting. I don't have a clear answer to that. I think that I'm definitely vulnerable to expectations being created by people that I'm hanging out with, that I've been around.
yeah,
Definitely, getting the start of my career at Pixar was a blessing, but also maybe a curse.
yeah.
Because
Interesting.
once you leave Pixar, then you kind of feel like, well, what am I doing? What am I going to do next? That's not going to be a step down
Hmm.
in terms of how impressive it is to the people that are surrounding me. And that's not why I got into it.
Right.
We were all kids who loved drawing,
Yeah.
or who loved, making a flip book, or trying a Super 8 camera to mess around in the backyard with it, and make silly films.
Hmm.
I am trying to sort of to reconnect with that, and check myself.
That's awesome. I had kind of the opposite experience where my goal was Disney Pixar, right? And was feeling like it was impeding me not having that on my resume, right? Because I'd worked at all these other
Mhm.
places and had all this other amazing experience, but I didn't have that brand name next to my name, right? And I had
Yeah.
an opportunity open up to go to one of
Mhm.
those studios, and I didn't want it at that point because I was enjoying all this original content development. I wanted to spend all my time doing that,
Good for
and
you.
I took a big risk, but I think it's starting to pay off. It's like people don't care if I didn't work at those places. They care
Sure.
about,
It's all about what you can do,
yeah,
right? And
about your
and and
drive,
what
and
you can you entertain people.
I'm sure that lots of the people who will listen to this, maybe their dream is to be at a big company, but do you have to?
Mhm.
Do you have to be successful work at those companies? It seems like more and more the answer is no.
I totally agree, especially recently. Speaking of online schools, you have such
Hmm.
wonderful
Yeah.
artists whether they've been to Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, etc., or not, you can learn so much. You can find your mentors online. The biggest thing I got out of Pixar, yes, there's a brand recognition thing that opens doors. However, the biggest thing that opens doors is really what you can do, what you can draw, the ideas, the solutions that you bring up creatively in order to sort of to solve problems, and entertain.
Yeah.
Um, all that stuff really, it exists out there. You can find your mentor, and that's why, for me, being at Pixar. Sorry, I'm just rewiring my thought. Being at Pixar at that time in the sort of early 2000s was when there was a little bit of online teaching. You could learn to be an animator from that. I think that
Hmm.
was just when the 10-second club was starting, or 11. I think it started as a 10-second club, but sort of people were seeing each other's work online to some degree, but there wasn't really the hardcore courses. But um, Pixar was just like almost every week there was a lecture.
Yeah.
There was, there was learning from the best animators in the world, and sort of and filmmakers, not just from animators, learning from everybody else, from designers, editors, cinematographers, actors, clowns. We even had, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but this wonderful puppeteer from Jim Henson Company. I don't know if he was actually with Jim Henson at the time, but he was a puppeteer of Gonzo from the Muppet Show.
Oh.
And he literally showed up and gave us a talk and sort of behind the scenes of the making of some of the greatest films. And then he brought out Gonzo and answered questions as Gonzo. It's just really fabulous exposure to master artists. And at the time, I think that's what really grew me as an artist, and as a creator. But yeah, also the curse, you got to be as big as that.
Yeah, you do. At the same time, it seems like you've managed. I think one of the reasons you've managed, having looked at people who've worked with you and what they say about you, is just you're so great to work with, and that's one of those underrated skills that people's experience of working with you is just as big as like your portfolio and what that looks like.
That's very kind of you and of them to say. Gosh, you said we'll go deep in this interview. I didn't realize how deep, but I have to say that working with people is kind of like drawing. You want to do it, but you also have to learn how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so young anymore. I mean, I'm almost 50, and one of the biggest things I realize is that sort of being good at drawing and animating is just not enough, because what we love doing is filmmaking is such a collaborative thing. I need to be able to not just convince people, not just rally people, but care for people. I need to make sure that people aren't just working for me or with me for the money or for the label, the experience, but they're working because they're improving themselves, and because they get a check, because somebody cares about their journey and not just about mine. And I think that's a switch that I made that I think changed me, and is actually incredibly gratifying for me as well.
Yeah, it really is, especially because each person's a little different too. Like some people have one motivation for why they're working and why they're doing what they're doing, and then another person will be completely different. And I think a mistake that sometimes we might want to make is, trying to direct everybody the same, where it's like, no, my way in with this person is very different than my way in with that person, because that person is like aimed at a different direction. They have something else different they want. And this person is aimed in that direction. And sometimes you might even have an artist who doesn't really see their potential, right? Or they don't really see what their passion is quite yet. And so they might be, I have a friend who went to Animation Mentor with me, and I worked a lot with him as his peer buddy as an animator, but this guy, he is a sculptor. He's a digital sculptor. He's now at Netflix. He's amazing. He's remarkable. Shout out to Menti, Mika Wellington. He's just a remarkable artist, but it took him a while to kind of realize, this isn't my passion, animation. I want to be making the character, and I want to, I'm a sculptor. And so
it's great.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, there's so much overlap between all these different disciplines, right?
Yeah.
Because wanting to entertaining is one thing, but wanting to create, I find that also in drawings. Like there are so many animators who don't really care for drawing. I remember when The Incredibles was arriving, sort of Brad and his whole entourage were slowly moving into Pixar. Then there was a lot of excitement in the animation department, because wow, Iron Giant. We're all like, yeah, like that. But but there was also a little bit of tension, because here coming in this small group of animators who are from traditional animation, and this is the first time that Pixar is going to focus on human characters in CG animation. And so everybody hurried up and started to go and do figure drawing. There was a bit of a rush to catch up on figure drawing at lunchtime. which was amazing that Pixar offered again a university. So the point being, sorry, rewiring, coming back to your comment about people are not always on the same path, is that between acting, being wanting to create wonderful performances, you might as well, you could be an on-screen actor, you could be a puppeteer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And crafting good performances in 3D animation doesn't necessarily mean you can draw them in hand-drawn animation.
Right.
And the other way is also true. Just because you can draw beautiful characters and you can make the motion feel organic and silky doesn't mean you're the best actor for every shot. And so I really see that. I really see that we're also wildly different when it comes to casting. When it comes to what would this animator be really good at, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also, where is this animator going,
Yeah.
and what does he or she want out of this experience?
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So, working at several different studios, we've talked a lot about Pixar. You've picked up a lot at various studios and various clients that you've worked with. And
Yeah.
I'd love to hear different insights you've gained from that process, because every studio is a bit different. And obviously, there are pros and cons to every single place you're going to work.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some favorites that emerge, and I definitely have my favorites. And but let's speak to that.
Very true. Very true. Well, first of all, it's a little bit self-conscious and sometimes a bit envious of people who spend many years at a studio, because it's you don't have to hustle anymore for work. And the reason I decided to leave Pixar is because my eldest son was at an age where he would start school, and I really wanted him to go to school in Israel, and it paid off. Three boys grew up here and are well on their way. But the thing is that if you're an animator sitting anywhere and you're itching to direct or to see how far you can go, then it's a good idea to move around and to go and see how other studios work, and also what can I do by myself, or I live in a different country. These are great things for one's creativity.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you know that the phrase "stocking the pond," I think it's from the book The Artist Way.
Oh yeah.
Stocking the pond is basically just not we artists have to take a pause from creating. We have to go see new things and experience life in order to have what to animate about or write and direct about, tell stories about.
Yeah.
So I think that the working at different studios, Pixar was definitely the place that was like a university for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the first job. It was the second job out of college. The first job was at actually Mannix Visual Effects, working on the Matrix sequels. But as soon as I got into the call from Pixar, I had to go there because I was so excited about them. And sure enough, it was a university. It was really learning so much, a master class every week in filmmaking and in acting, in the craft. After that, came actually working for a small studio in Israel that was really starting up, where they were trying to make an animated feature film, but there wasn't enough experience in the management and in the leadership. I was sort of excited to have a shot at directing animation.
Yeah.
But I was really just a young animator,
Yeah.
straight out of my first job as an animator at Pixar.
I noticed that in your lineup. I was like, wow, he went from animator to director, like animation director. It was fast.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't the director of the film, but definitely animation director. It's kind of like, well, small pond, medium fish, I guess.
Yeah.
But it was a very educating thing, because I think first of all, coming out of Pixar, it's a funny thing happened to me, at least. I'll speak for myself, but I think it happens to other ex-Pixarians as well, is that you kind of have thin skin. You come out not really ready to hustle. You're not ready for the having to talk about money and talking about, I mean, money other than your own salary. There's the sort of the money discussion of how much will this project cost, or if we do this much over here, the conversation with the producers, the leadership conversation often touches on resources and on, if we do this, if we open this door, we have to close that one.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
coming from Pixar, you don't really know how to do that. Definitely not as a junior animator, but
Yeah.
but I had to learn pretty quickly, and I think that was an excellent sort of jump into the cold water of and learning to swim,
Yeah.
deep water and cold,
Yes.
without knowing how
I mean, you're
to
talking
swim.
about business and entrepreneurial skills. These are and sales
Correct.
skills, and these
But
are a
also
lot of different
leadership.
types of skills. Leadership skills; those are another entire set of skills that take a lifetime to master, right? So yeah.
Right, and that's one of the big difference also between studios is that the organizational culture sometimes is very much about creative collaboration and about yes and, right? And some of them are very much about the business. They're much more mercenary. They're much more about sort of like, we tried this, we didn't get approval, let's go again. We're going to try again and again and again. It's not, there isn't really a culture in every studio of conversations about what else could we be doing? Why, wouldn't it be fun if we did this, right?
Yeah.
Striving to fail, trying to fail as quickly as possible to see what we have.
That's awesome. I love that. You're speaking my language here, just having worked outside the industry for so long. But yet I'm still tied into it, and I'm technically in the industry now, supervising at Steamroller, and at the same time,
Fantastic.
like all of
what a wonderful company.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
sorry, can we just pause on that?
Yeah.
Because I just I think it was a couple months ago, we had a visit here in Israel. Oh no, I'm blanking. Gilman.
Aaron?
Your CEO.
Aaron
Gilman.
Yeah,
Thank
Gilman.
you.
Yeah.
Awesome guy. And he gave a talk about the organizational culture and about leadership and about caring about top-down leadership. And wow, boy, would I love to have a shot at that, see what that's like. So please, how is that? What is that like?
Well, I'm on week 3 or 4. I started mid-September. So, however, I just came from an experience where I was one of the people building the studio. I started the same time as one of the people who's in the credits as a studio founder, and he was the producer and I was the director. The reason I'm not listed as a studio founder is because I couldn't really commit my entire career to that place. I just had too many other things going on.
Sure.
So,
sure.
So, and actually, it was a super cool, very difficult, but great learning experience, kind of a university type of experience you were describing. So, yeah, then I popped from there to here, and just the amount of organization, it's a well-oiled machine. And at the same time, it's not really a machine. They realize it's people working on these projects. And so there's a lot of care that goes into taking care of the people and making sure everybody is feeling fulfilled, feeling comfortable, but pushed just enough that they're progressing at a nice rate. And yeah, it's really challenged to get that right. And it seems so far like they've gotten that right. And it's been remarkable.
It looks like it. And the work looks beautiful. And the animators that I met that work there are also super happy and encouraged. So
yes,
they're doing something right.
We are. Yeah. I'm part of them now, and it's not a place that I want to leave. So, yeah, it's definitely a place to stay a long time.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
Fantastic. And you get to work from home, which is wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have a question from an audience member, and I didn't quite understand it. So, let me pop in here. So the question about Jimmy Levinsky was asking about you need influence, and which is more likely to happen with our own projects. I'm not sure what he meant by that, but if you want to type in there, Jimmy, we'll check out your question in a second.
Well, first of all, I want to say hello to Jimmy because Jimmy's a fantastic friend. In fact, Jimmy is an amazing character sculptor.
Yeah, didn't he sculpt the character that's in the thumbnail?
Very good. Yes, he did. And you mentioned him as well in the in the LinkedIn comment.
Yeah.
So please repeat the question. Influence.
Yeah, he says, I bet it is about influence. Which is more likely to happen with our own projects?
Which is more likely to happen?
Yeah.
Between what? Which is between influence or?
I don't know. I don't know what the question was, but
Okay, Jimmy,
I thought I'd give him a
Jimmy,
chance
type
to.
it again, please.
Yeah. So while he's typing that, we'll actually skip right to the last segment that I usually do. It's called the Get Wiser moment, and then we'll hop back to
Okay.
his question. So the Get Wiser moment is obviously, if we're going to spend millions of dollars on a project, it's going to mean something, you know?
Right.
And that's something I
Right.
just keep thinking about. And I don't see the depth of meaning that I'd like to see in most animated films these days. And so my
Mm-hmm.
question I always ask is, if my goal is to get the deepest like the most concentrated amount of meaning into a project, what approach would you recommend? And there's always a
Um,
different answer from every audience member, and it kind of takes a second to start to think about. So go ahead and take your time with that question.
yeah,
But
yeah. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. I will. I will. Um, so that resonates in that, the project that I'm developing. When I found what my personal story is for Dream On, and how this is a therapy session for me, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
a father-son story. It's a story about this sort of misbelief that a main character has about having to be like his father, right? In order to have good things, to be happy in life. Because that's the model that a lot of us grow up with, right? Whether it's a father or a mother, a parental figure, right? That is the model, a positive parental figure that causes us to feel like, I need to be like that. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we're not.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we're just so different
Mm-hmm.
that it's a struggle,
Yeah.
and we have to find our own way of being happy and being, our own concept of being successful without being that kind. And so that's a story that I can tell forever. That's a story that is meaningful to me, and I found the more I share it, the more people jump up and down and say, "Yeah, that's just like my mother. That's just like my father. That's exactly me. You're telling my story."
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to hear that. And I realize that I have to keep coming back to that in the story to make
Yeah.
sure that that is resonating, that theme is coming through, that struggle is continuing coming back to that thread of what the story is about. And obviously, I
Yeah.
think it was John Truby in The Anatomy of Story that only
Yeah.
today I understood what he meant, in where he said that choosing the idea for your story it has to be a story that changes your life.
Yes, that's like the last couple pages is when he talks about that, right? Where he's like, you need to go on
Right,
a journey as a filmmaker yourself, and you need to grow a lot as a person.
right,
Yeah.
right. And so I think that if this story isn't changing my life, it means it won't change other people's lives. It
Right.
means that the meaning isn't coming through. And so as long as I have that, and there's like 1,000 things to think about when you're making a film, between getting it, if it's an independent film, getting it funded, getting the right team on board, and what does it look like, what does it play like, the music, etc. But having something on the wall to keep reminding you this is why you're telling the story.
Mm.
I think I'm answering the question,
I think you are, and
but
it
that's
sounds like
that's my.
life experience to me. And you said that earlier about living life. You know,
Mm,
if you're trying to write a meaningful story but you have zero life experience, then that needs to be, like John Truby said, part of your writing process is to get that life experience, or
yeah,
or you need to, we treasure youth a lot in our society, where it's like, I don't know, there's something to be said about that person who's gone through a lot of experiences that I mean,
yeah,
I don't know about you, but I want to go and sit in front of them and ask them all these questions, like, how did you get through that? How did you overcome
absolutely.
that struggle? And yeah.
You're so right, Scott. I mean, I think maybe it's mostly the Western world, the first world that we're familiar with, that really is obsessed with youth.
Hmm.
And in my head, I'm also going back to energy and being, extroverted and all that. But really, it's so true. I can't remember who said that youth is wasted on the young. You know,
I've heard it though.
but I'm not sure it's the same meaning. It just reminds me. It's like, if I were your age, I'd be doing this and this and that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not true. I actually really love growing older or more mature in that I get this experience, I get this perspective. I've also let go of things. I've given up on certain misbeliefs and sort of and ambitions that I feel are not helpful.
Yeah.
Just like you spoke about before, about do you really need to direct a big film, or maybe you're just happy animating. Um,
Yeah.
uh, Life is long, life is long. We can have it all. We can sort of mix the trying to continually climbing that mountain, but also enjoying the flowers on the way.
Yeah, yeah. Because sometimes, and I'm sure you've experienced this as much as I, if there is this thing you're burning to do, like directing a feature film, sometimes that can make you miserable too.
Yes,
You know, of
been there. That's
course.
why my hair is white here. That's from yeah, obsessing over that. But
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fine. It all gets white. Actually, it's genetic.
yeah. Mine's coming too. It's slowly, but yeah. In some ways, that suffering is worth it, though. Too. If you can learn how to channel that into your stories, then it can become worth it. So back to Jimmy's question, which that was a great answer, and I love how each person comes in with a different perspective on that question. That's why I keep asking it, because there's so much to it. There really is, and I
Very good.
and I imagine me at 80, is going to be like, wow, there's so much more to this question than you ever thought. Because it's all really about how do you live? How are we going to live? How do we encourage other people to live better?
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know?
And it's what's amazing how it all finds its way back into the work process, whether
Yes,
you're writing or storyboarding. Like
yes,
all of that, how do you live actually also means I've become more patient. I noticed I don't I and I enjoy the sort of the drawing and the crafting of a scene much more than I used to because I was in a hurry to prove myself. Now I'm not. Now I'm just enjoying it.
do it as it comes,
You know,
right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
So the
here's
question.
here's the rest of Jimmy's question. So originally it was, which is more likely to happen with our own projects? And then he said, oh, it was about the pursuit of our own films/projects. It came from your talk about wanting to go back to the craft of animation from the position of creation of our own projects in general, and what might push us to do our own things/films, etc. What I'm guessing
Mhm.
is that it might come from the need of having influence over our time spent. Hope it makes sense.
Hmm. I'm gonna have to jump on a Zoom call with Jimmy after this to make sure that I got it.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of what influences what the pursuit, I think I'm gonna say something that's always right. All right,
Yeah.
everything influences everything else,
Yes.
right? Your work as a professional, you work on project A, you work on project B, putting project C aside for a couple of months and letting it just rest so that you care a bit less about it, and then coming back to it with new fresh eyes and sort of a bit, maybe a bit more like playful and less obsessive
Yeah. That's
attitude. I think
precious.
that's yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I think every choice influences other experiences. Um, that's as far as I'm going to guess what Jimmy meant by that question, and
Yeah.
we'll follow up later.
It seems to me when I get questions like this that somebody's trying to they're maybe comparing themselves to like, okay, here's where Alex is, here's where Scott is, and I want to have these things happen. How can I
Hmm.
replicate that? And so they're maybe doing a little bit of inward searching, like, do I have the stuff of what it takes to get this? I get the question all
Mm.
the time, like, what drives you? Like, you come out with all these things, and there's so much content coming out of you. What is the motor? And it's a question that I
Mm.
can't quite answer because human beings, we really don't really understand ourselves as well as we think we do, because we'll
Mm.
have a new experience and all of a sudden you learn something new about yourself, right? And so
True.
sometimes there are things that are so deep that it's hard to put words to them. And I wonder if he's
Hmm.
trying to kind of maybe get at that, or maybe
Mm.
he's just asking for a quick tip. It could be both.
And I'm too old for quick tips. I'm all about the slow tips these days. Um, yeah. I think that there's I've made all the mistakes. Honestly, I mean, I've gone out trying to get a lot of attention for not enough substance.
Yeah.
And then I've gone back and focused on substance, hoping that, sorry, maybe it's the other way around. I started out by focusing on my substance and not on attention.
Mm.
Um, it, Believing that it doesn't matter who knows you and who's aware of you, but what matters is how good your work is, and which I think is a healthy beginning,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to be the person who's out there getting amazing opportunities just because he or she are um, amazing at getting attention,
Mm-hmm.
right? That
Yeah.
that's a because, well, I can't be that. You know, if Jimmy, you're not that person either. You're a person of substance and of making just gorgeous looking characters that you want to see in a film. And so I think that authenticity is really where it comes down to. It's just having that quiet of mindfulness to be able to say, what do I really want? Who am I?
Yeah.
Um, Letting that sort of lead you through, because you're already a professional. You can do stuff that people want.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not a child anymore. You're a grown up with a craft, commercial craft.
Yeah.
And so you can, now you get to really lean back and think, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
And the more you sort of focus on that and just be authentically, just say it. Don't pretend to be somebody else.
Yeah.
Just be that. You know.
At the same time, I think there's a little bit. I think many times I've erred on both sides. Like sometimes I'm focusing too much on substance and not enough on the attention. Sometimes I focus too much on the attention, not enough on the substance. Right. So you're gonna, in order to get big things to happen, you have to be willing to kind of struggle very publicly, I think, and let people.
Absolutely.
And I think the authentic nature comes in your willingness to change and to adapt and to say, maybe I went a little bit too far in my video on this Kickstarter campaign, so I dial it back on the next video. And then, this third video that I made on this
Mhm.
Kickstarter was much more authentic because I didn't focus on me. I
Mm,
focused on the reader, and I actually recorded people as they finished reading the book, and I just captured their experiences. And then when I was on
right.
screen talking, I was talking more about the people who've supported this in the past, and really
Nice.
working to figure out who they were and what resonated with them,
Right.
and
Right.
which is where we started to dial in this deeply meaningful. Those two words, they just tend
Uh-huh.
to always sit around this brand that at least I'm building, and it might be different for the next person, right? There might be another set of
Sure.
three words that really motivates you. But yeah,
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
I love how you describe that willingness to change and to like reassess and say
Well,
maybe I'm
and
focusing on one area more than the other.
true. And we're all in a way, we're products of a society that we grew up in. It's
Yeah.
from, of a family, right? I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in a family where it was a lot about modesty and about not to first do and then talk about it. Like,
Yeah.
don't talk about yourself. Don't show off, right?
Yeah.
A little bit reserved English, um, you know, kind of not old fashioned, but definitely quiet, private,
Yeah.
and just do prove yourself. People will hear of you when it's time, when you've done enough, right?
Yeah.
And Hollywood isn't like that.
No.
Hollywood definitely needs you to speak up, show up, big energy, strong coffee, right? Um, you, you gotta bring the show. It's called show business for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you gotta learn. You gotta realize that. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, mommy and daddy. This is how it's done.
Yeah, we are kind of talking about a yin and a yang, though. I think if you're one side more
Mhm.
than the other, you might become off balanced. And
Correct.
perhaps it's by, finding balance between those two extremes. That's when you can do your best work, possibly. So,
Still searching.
yeah, me too.
uh,
Yeah, that's why it's been so great to have you on. And if people want to follow your work, where's the best place to do that?
wow, fantastic. So I've recently started and stopped and started on Instagram because I
Hmm.
do like the that. So Instagram is there. I think I'm at Alex Orrelle.
Yep, and that's in the show
Um,
notes.
Correct. Thank you. And
Hmm.
LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. Um, I guess that's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's enough, isn't it?
all the places. And my stuff is down in the show notes. And thank you again so much, Alex, for being on here. And
A big pleasure
for
and
sharing all your knowledge.
and a privilege.
Yep.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. And until next time, I hope we all get a little wiser. Thank you for watching the Directing Animation Livecast, hosted by Scott Weiser. Audio version edited by Kira Horowitz. Copyright Scott Weiser LLC 2022. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and ring that notification bell.